What's good, Kanekis? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. So in this one, we're going to be checking out Gary Stevenson. I'm sure many of you will have seen him on your social media feed of late. It seems like the algorithm is pushing him. So he's Gary Stevenson from Gary's Economics. He advocates for higher taxes on the rich in the hopes that that can then be distributed further down the class line so that the middle class and the working class will be able to benefit from it. However, you cannot multiply wealth by distributing it, which I will explain after I give him the chance to present his case in 2 videos. But before we get into it, please hit the like button, subscribe as well if you're new and you haven't already, to catch future uploads that I release. Let's get into this one.
That this is going to happen, that this situation will get worse and worse and worse, which it has been doing. I was betting on it for 10 years before that. For people who don't know who I am, I was Citibank's #1 trader in the world in 2011. I got paid millions of pounds because I bet that our economy would collapse because he wouldn't deal with growing inequality. I quit that job in 2014 to try and stop that inequality from growing. I was doing that in private until the beginning of COVID, when it became clear that inequality would increase enormously. Does anyone know what the total government deficit is since the beginning of COVID? It's £1 trillion now, which is £20,000 for every single adult in the country. So if every single one of you is not £20,000 cash richer, someone else has your money.
That's a good point he's made, to be
It's
fair.
the increase in the debt, which is the deficit.
Right, yeah.
Does anyone know who has that £1 trillion?
I think you might be about to tell us.
It is the richest people in the country. It is the richest people in the country. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If we pause the economy and give £1 trillion, £20,000 for every adult in this room and the rest of the country to the richest people in the country, and then unpause the economy, what do you think will happen to living standards for ordinary people? They will collapse. This is a problem of growing wealth inequality. The extremely rapid growth of wealth of the richest people in the country. The average billionaire increased their wealth by £630 million in the first year alone of COVID.
When you say it's for wealthy people, isn't it things like the Canadian pension funds and all that sort of thing?
It's the wealthiest individuals in the country. It's multimillionaires and billionaires. These are the guys.
But also massive pension funds from abroad.
And who are the overwhelming owners of those pension funds? The richest people in the country. Listen, these men and women are not £20,000 richer.
I don't know if they're the richest people in the country, but okay.
Who here's £20,000 cash rich than before COVID? I'll tell you who probably is. Every single person on this panel, okay? The richest people in the country are getting richer.
Hang on, don't include us in all this. I don't know if you've seen the way the
Okay, let me pause it here. So a lot of the points he makes, all right, the rich have gotten richer after COVID, but once again, he isn't addressing the main issue. The main issue is not that. Okay, I'll just let him keep going. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's almost done, halfway through.
They're not exactly raising salaries about that.
All I'm going to say, this growth in wealth inequality, it is going to keep the middle class and the working class poor. It is going to gut government services, and that is the people in this room. Their kids, their grandkids will be poor.
Gary, you've obviously...
we are not dealing with wealth inequality.
You rightly say, you spent a lot of time thinking about this. What do you think the solution is?
This is where he goes wrong.
We have to shift the tax system. We have a tax system which taxes ordinary working people.
This is where he goes wrong.
40, 50, 60%. While people like the Duke of Westminster can inherit £10 billion and pay nothing. If you do that, wealth will be sucked out of the middle class. It's already been completely bankrupted the working class. It will bankrupt the government, which is what we are seeing, and there'll be poverty. There'll be broad poverty. There'll be no middle class left. Why are we taxing working people more than billionaires? Tax wealth, not work. Give these people a break. Give their kids a chance. Tax the billionaires. Of course you should.
Okay.
But of course they would approach.
And just briefly, you all know as well as I do that wealth taxes have been tried in a number of countries. Only Switzerland has stuck with it. I mean, they've got no capital gains tax, they've got no inheritance tax, they've got a slightly different situation. Yeah. Most countries have abandoned them because they don't bring in that much revenue. What makes you think it would be different here?
Fiona, we did it here.
It doesn't work.
We did it here in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and people like my dad, people like my granddad, who was a bus conductor, were able to buy houses, have financial security, have pensions, have retirements, go on holidays. We did it here. We did it here, and we're losing that now because we're not taxing the rich. The rich are getting richer, and ordinary families are losing the ability to buy houses, have kids. We can do it. We've done it before.
Now, notice the years he mentioned, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. If you watch my previous videos, you know what happened in the 70s, 1971. The dollar went up the gold standard, meaning all currencies went up the gold standard, and then they printed it to infinity. As a result, all currencies were devalued massively. No currency was spared, not even the Great British Pound. That is why the middle class has been absolutely blown to smithereens. That is why the rich have gotten richer, because they own assets that increase in value because of inflation, while the middle class and the working class do not own these assets. So these assets are, think of things like the real estate, the stock market, gold. But you don't have to be extremely rich to own gold. You can buy it in small ways that I've talked about in previous videos. But his thinking is that, because taxes were high in this period, that's why the UK middle class were able to buy all these things. No, they could already buy these things because they were on sound money. They were on a gold standard. The taxes were only high in this period because they had to pay down the debt that the government incurred because of the World War II. That is the only reason taxes were high. In fact, here is a really important chart for me to show you. So this is American income tax returns. It's basically the number of households that had to file for income tax. So in 1913, it was around 2%. About 2% of households paid income tax. Initially, it was introduced to the middle class and working class as only the rich will be paying these. So, of course, the middle class and working class say, yeah, sure, no problem. If that means we're going to be getting more money and we don't have to pay anything. Of course, who's going to say no to that? Because at that time, everyone was paying tariffs. So the income tax was sold to these classes as a way to eliminate tariffs. Everyone was happy. Everything was dandy. However, after the Great Depression in 1929, look at this massive spike. They then included the working class and the middle class in the people eligible to be paying income tax. It was no longer just limited to the rich. Everyone was to pay income tax. So they do this thing where they present these taxes, these tariffs, as something that only the rich will pay, but then eventually they expand the number of people who are eligible for these taxes. That's why I'm saying what Gary is talking about is very dangerous, because it's typically the working class and some of the middle class who would be supporting him because of politics of envy. They're seeing rich people getting richer and they're saying, I want a piece of that pie. So they'll say, yeah, of course, tax the rich. Me thinking that they will be getting more of that money, but you cannot tax your way to wealth. You cannot multiply wealth by dividing it. I will say it again. You cannot multiply wealth by dividing it. It has never worked, like the news anchor said in that video. It has never worked. It never works. Okay? So whatever he's talking about, whatever he's saying about taxing people more, it's just going to make the middle class poorer. Once again, the issue is not taxes. The issue is sound money. We are not on a gold standard. We are using fiat currencies that are backed by nothing. That is why people's purchasing power and people's living standards have dwindled. Next, if you tax billionaires, if you tax the really wealthy, or they can just move. They don't have to stay in the UK. They can leave, like this chart is showing us. So it's a chart that shows the UK high net worth individuals' net migration. If it goes negative, it means that millionaires are leaving. As we are seeing in 2024, the biggest net migration out of the UK occurred. Why did this occur? Because Labour came into power. What has Labour done? They have increased taxes on the rich and the wealthy. They've increased inheritance tax. They've increased taxes on businesses by increasing employers' contribution to national insurance tax. So they can just leave. They can leave. And what does this mean? It means that the government does not get their tax money because they've left the country. Who's left holding the bag? The citizens, because it means that the government then has to drive more deficits because they're not getting as much revenue in, and the taxpayer ends up holding the bag. It doesn't work. Higher taxes do not work. Okay? Let me just drill that into your head. Higher taxes do not work, Gary. It doesn't work. So what actually can be done? Well, Gary believes that telling poor people to be entrepreneurial is sick. So this is the second video I'll let him talk about his points in. So let's listen to him.
Okay? My friends can't feed their kids, okay? And if it was as simple as going out and being an entrepreneur, I can bet you they would do it. I can bet you they would do it. I'm sick of multimillionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, Dan. It's sick. But this gives people mental illness. It gives people mental illness. Tell them the truth, okay? We, your older generation, we took the opportunities, and now it is almost impossible to get out of poverty. And don't just stand up there and wave, your millions of pounds in front of them and say, if you were entrepreneurial like me, you could do it, you could have it. Because it's sick, because they can't. They can't feed their kids, Dan. They can't turn the heating on. Don't tell them to be more entrepreneurial. Fix the system that drives more and more and more of them into poverty every generation.
You see now, he is half right. Yes, I do agree. It is wrong to just tell the less fortunate to be more entrepreneurial. I do agree. However, the fix is not by raising taxes. The fix is by making sure that the money they earn actually stores value over time. You cannot pay them in something that loses value, because it means that they'll need to work even harder and harder and harder to maintain that same standard of living that they had 5 years prior. Right? Once again, he doesn't talk. I mean, yes, it's just like a 48-second clip, but I have watched enough of his podcast to know exactly where his point was going. He wasn't going to talk about the currency losing value. He just wasn't. And that's the thing. By telling them it's impossible, you're now taking away their autonomy. Like, what's the alternative? To tell them it's impossible and they can't do anything about this situation, or to tell them why they're struggling and how to get out of it. So how did they get out of it? Well, first by saving. First, they have to save in something that doesn't lose value, gold or silver. Yes, gold might be a bit too expensive, but silver is not. Silver is like 33 quid. 33 quid. I think most of us can put 33 quid away every 2 weeks. Cancel your Netflix subscription. Cancel the Amazon Prime. Cancel, I don't know, maybe stop going to Starbucks. Save. Stop using credit cards. It is possible. You can actually get out of it. It is possible. Don't listen to him and think, oh, woe is me. No one's coming. Look, listen, the government isn't coming to save you. The government isn't coming to save any of us. You have to take it into your own hands. It is possible to get out of the bad situation. You just need to lock in. You really do just need to lock in. So I'll end with this by Daniel Lacal, who succinctly puts all the points I've mentioned in this video in one tweet. It goes like this. The really dangerous economic policy was pretend and extend. Bloating government spending, debt, taxes, and money printing destroyed the middle class and brought persistent inflation. Remember, the taxes are also being applied to the middle class. And that means that they have less money to spend on everyday goods. Politicians and an elite loved it because they became powerful and rich. So taxes are part of the problem, yet he's calling for more of it. So guys, the next time you see Gary Stevenson on your timeline, please ignore. Please ignore. Do not fall for the politics of envy. That is just the way to introduce a Trojan horse to tax the middle class and the working class more. Once again, remember that the rich can actually leave the country, which they are, in massive numbers. Unfortunately, the middle class, the working class, some of us do not have that luxury to just get up and leave and change our tax rules or anything like that. These people have loopholes that they can use to evade taxes. Not many of us are that lucky. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Please hit the like button, subscribe as well. I just encourage you to think more about these videos, these people who are pushed onto our timeline, just looking so angry and talking about politics of envy, telling us to hate a certain class. Because they all have an agenda. Listen to the ones that are talking about personal autonomy, telling you how you can actually fix your own situation as opposed to just pointing fingers all the time. Please share this video out so more people see it. I think YouTube has been limiting they've been limiting the reach of my content. I don't think they like truth being spread out as much these days. So please do share this video out with friends, people you believe will enjoy the content, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.